The maintenance deck of the Eternal Dominion smelled like oil and burnt metal. Day one sorted through a box of spare parts, his hands moving automatically after another long shift. The massive warship hummed around him, its engines creating a constant vibration through the floor. He had been working here for 8 months now, ever since Earth lost the war and had to send workers as tribute to the Kryvaxian Empire. Most days were quiet. He fixed broken equipment, replaced worn parts, and stayed invisible. That was the key to survival for humans on alien ships. Stay quiet, work hard, and never draw attention to yourself. Above him, in the gleaming upper decks, something very different was happening. Queen Velretha stood in the grand ceremonial chamber, surrounded by ambassadors from a dozen different species. Her massive form towered over them all, standing 9 feet tall with 6 powerful arms and chitinous armor that grew naturally from her body. Her compound eyes gleamed as she prepared to demonstrate the military might of her empire. She raised all 6 arms, and the ancient ceremonial armor activated. Power flowed through the joints, making her even more imposing. The ambassadors watched with a mixture of fear and respect. This armor had been worn by Kryvaxian queens for 1,000 years. It was more than equipment. It was sacred. Then the power flickered, the queen's left arm locked in place. Sparks shot from the shoulder joint. The gleaming armor that had worked perfectly for centuries suddenly betrayed her in front of everyone who mattered. The diplomatic representatives whispered to each other. Some looked amused. Others looked calculating. Seeing weakness where there had been strength, Velretha's rage filled the chamber like a physical force. She dismissed everyone with a harsh gesture and stormed toward her private armory, her guards scrambling to keep up. Behind closed doors she roared at her chief technician, a nervous Kryvaxian named Thalen. "Fix it!" "Now," Thalen bowed so low his head nearly touched the floor. "Yes, Your Majesty, immediately." But there was a problem. The queen's armor was sacred. Ancient law said that only she could give permission for anyone to touch it, and the penalty for unauthorized contact was death. Thalen had that permission now, but he was terrified. What if he made it worse? What if he damaged something irreplaceable? His hands shook as he examined the armor. Hours passed. Thalen and his team stood around the armor, arguing in whispers, too afraid to actually begin work. None of them wanted to be the one who destroyed a 1,000-year-old treasure. Down in the maintenance deck, Day one heard voices echoing through the ventilation system. The metal ducts carried sound from all over the ship. He heard frustrated technicians describing the malfunction. Power core failure. Neural interface disruption. Joint seizure in the primary arm actuator. He stopped sorting parts. He knew those symptoms. 3 years ago on Earth, he had worked on military exoskeletons for the Defense Force. They had used similar biomechanical interfaces. Old ones had the same problem when certain metals corroded and created feedback loops in the system. Day one stood up and looked toward the ceiling, as if he could see through the metal to the royal deck above. He should stay out of it. This was not his problem. Getting involved with anything related to the Queen was dangerous, but his hands remembered the work. His mind already saw the solution, and there was something in him that could not leave a problem unsolved. When he knew the answer, he waited until the middle of the night when most of the ship slept. The royal armory was guarded, but the guards were watching for external threats, not for a single human maintenance worker. Day one had access codes for technical areas. He slipped through service corridors, moving like a shadow. The armory was dimly lit. The Queen's armor stood on a display frame, still sparking occasionally. Day one approached it carefully, his heart pounding. He had never seen anything like this up close. The armor was beautiful in a strange alien way, organic and mechanical at the same time. He opened his tool bag and got to work. First, he disabled the power core to make it safe. Then he carefully removed the panel covering the shoulder joint where the malfunction had started. Inside, he found exactly what he expected. 2 different metals had been used in the neural interface, and over centuries they had corroded where they touched. The corrosion created electrical interference that disrupted the whole system. Day one worked through the night with steady hands. He removed the corroded relay and replaced it with a compatible component from his bag. He recalibrated the neural interface using principles he had learned on Earth. Then he noticed other weak points. A joint that was wearing thin. A power distribution node that was working at only 60% efficiency. He fixed those too. Not because he had to, but because it felt wrong to leave them broken when he could help Dot as dawn approached. He put everything back together, tested the system twice, and slipped away. His hands were cramped and his eyes burned from exhaustion, but the armor worked perfectly now. Better than it had in years. He returned to his quarters and collapsed on his narrow bed. Hoping no one would ever know what he had done, the next morning, Queen Velritha had an important meeting with military commanders. She donned her armor with reluctance, expecting it to fail again and humiliate her further. But when the power activated, everything worked smoothly. The joints moved like water. The neural interface responded to her thoughts instantly. The power distribution was perfect. She took a step and felt the difference immediately. The armor had not worked this well since she first inherited it 20 years ago. Velritha stopped moving. Her compound eyes narrowed. Something was different. Someone had touched her armor. Guards! Her voice echoed through the halls. Someone has been in my armory. The security chief arrived quickly, already reviewing footage from the night before. Within an hour, they identified the intruder. A human. A nobody from the maintenance decks. Day one was dragged from his workstation by 4 armed guards. Other human workers watched in horror as he was hauled away. Everyone knew what happened to people who violated sacred laws. They threw him onto the floor of the throne room. Queen Velritha sat on her massive seat, all 6 arms resting on the armrests. Her advisor Thalen stood nearby, looking both relieved and angry. The court had gathered to witness judgment. Velritha stood slowly. She descended the steps toward the human trembling on the floor. The room fell absolutely silent. Who fixed my armor? She roared, her voice shaking the walls. Day one looked up at her towering form. He could lie. He could claim it was an accident. But lies never helped anything. His voice was quiet but clear. I did, Your Majesty. The silence that followed felt like the end of the world. Queen Velritha stared down at the human on the floor. Around the throne room, her council members shifted nervously. They had all heard the human's confession. He had touched the sacred armor without permission. The law was ancient and clear. Death was the only punishment. Advisor Thalen stepped forward, his voice filled with righteous anger. Your Majesty, this is an outrage. The human has defiled our most sacred tradition. He must be executed immediately as an example to all the lesser species. Other council members nodded in agreement. To let this crime go unpunished would make the queen look weak. Word would spread throughout the empire that humans could violate their most important laws without consequence. But Velritha did not move. She continued studying the small figure before her. The human was not cowering or begging for mercy. He simply knelt there, accepting whatever fate came. There was a strange dignity in that. More importantly, her armor worked perfectly now. After years of small problems and decreasing efficiency, it functioned like new. Better than new, actually. Her own master technicians had failed to fix it. This human succeeded in a single night. Stand up, she commanded. Day one rose to his feet, though his legs shook. Even standing, he barely reached the middle of her chest. She could crush him with one hand. You will explain exactly what you did to my armor, Velritha said. Every step. Every change. If I find that you have damaged it in any way, your death will take days. If your work is acceptable, you may live. Begin. Day one took a deep breath. His mouth was dry, but he began explaining. He described how he identified the problem by listening to the symptoms through the ventilation system. He explained how certain metals corrode when they touch each other over long periods. He detailed the biomechanical cascade failure that resulted from this corrosion. As he spoke, he used his hands to illustrate the concepts. He drew diagrams in the air. He bridged the gap between human engineering terms and Cravaxian technology by finding common principles. He explained not just what he did, but why it worked. The council members listened with growing amazement. The human spoke with confidence about systems he should not understand. He used logic and science to explain mysteries that Kryvaxian technicians had given up on. Thalen interrupted. This is impossible. The human could not possibly understand Kryvaxian bioarmor. He is lying or guessing. We should not waste time listening to this. Velrida held up one hand for silence. You had your chance to fix my armor, Thalen. You failed. Let us see if the human is lying. She turned to her chief technician. Inspect every change he made. I want a complete report within 3 hours. Thalen bowed stiffly and left to examine the armor. Day 1 was taken to a holding cell to wait. The hours crawled by like days. He sat on the metal bench and thought about Earth, about his family, about all the things he would never see again if Thalen found any mistakes. In the Royal Armory, Thalen worked with growing frustration. He wanted to find errors. He wanted to prove the human wrong. But every modification he examined was perfect. The replacement relay was exactly the right specification. The recalibration of the neural interface was brilliant. The reinforcement of weak joints showed understanding of stress patterns that took Kryvaxian engineers decades to learn. Worse, the human had found problems that Thalen himself had missed. 3 potential failure points had been strengthened. The power distribution efficiency had been improved by 15%. The armor was not just fixed. It was upgraded. When Thalen returned to the throne room, he could barely speak. He had to admit the truth in front of everyone. The human's work is acceptable, Your Majesty. The armor functions properly. Velretha's compound eyes focused on him. Only acceptable? Thalen swallowed hard. The work is ... excellent. Better than I could have done. The throne room erupted in shocked whispers. A human outperforming the Empire's master technician was unthinkable. Velretha made a decision that surprised everyone. The human will become my personal armorer. He will be given quarters near the Royal Armory and access to proper tools and materials. He will maintain all my equipment from this day forward. The council exploded in protest. This was too much. A slave species given such an honor? It violated every tradition. It made a mockery of Kryvaxian superiority, but Velretha silenced them with a roar. I am queen. The human has proven his worth. Any of you who doubt my judgment may challenge me directly. No one accepted that invitation. Day 1 was brought back to the throne room in chains. When he heard the queen's verdict, he could not believe it. He had expected death. Instead, he was being promoted to a position that most Kryvaxians would never achieve. You will serve me well, Velretha told him, or you will die. Do you understand? Yes, Your Majesty, Day 1 replied. Over the following weeks, Day 1 settled into his new role. He was given a small room near the armory, far better than the cramped quarters in the maintenance deck. He received tools he had only dreamed of using, and he was given time to work carefully instead of rushing through endless repairs. At first, the Queen's guards watched him constantly, expecting him to sabotage something or try to escape. But Day 1 simply worked. He maintained the armor with careful attention. He improved systems gradually, always explaining what he did and why. Queen Velretha began visiting the armory while he worked. At first, she simply observed in silence. Then she started asking questions. Why do humans build machines so differently from us? She asked one day. Day 1 looked up from his work. We have to, Your Majesty. Humans are not as strong as Kryvaxians. We cannot grow natural armor like you. So we must build tools and machines to compensate. It makes us creative because we have no other choice. Velretha considered this. She had never thought about weakness as a source of innovation before. As days turned into weeks, she asked more questions. About Earth, about human culture, about Day 1's life before the war. She learned that he had studied engineering at a university, that he had a younger sister who was also sent to work on another ship, that he loved solving problems more than anything else. For the first time in her life, Velretha saw a human as an individual rather than just a member of a conquered species. But outside the armory, tensions were growing. News of the human armor had spread throughout the Empire. Many saw it as weakness. Among those who disapproved most strongly was the Vrex Collective, a militant faction that believed in Kryvaxian supremacy above all else. Their leader, Warlord Cross, sent a message to Queen Valritha. It was phrased as a diplomatic inquiry, but everyone understood the real meaning. "We question your judgment in elevating a human to such a position," the message read. "It sends the wrong message to conquered species everywhere. Perhaps a demonstration of proper Kryvaxian strength is needed." Valritha crushed the message tablet in one hand. She knew what was coming. The Vrex Collective was preparing for conflict. They saw her tolerance of Day One as a sign that she had gone soft. They were about to test that theory in blood. 2 months had passed since Day One became the Queen's personal armorer. His reputation had grown far beyond the royal armory. Word spread through the ship that the human could fix anything. Soldiers came to him with weapons that other technicians had declared beyond repair. Officers brought him problems with shield generators and power cores. Each time, Day One found solutions that others had missed. He never turned anyone away. It did not matter if they were high-ranking commanders or low-level maintenance workers. If something was broken and he could fix it, he did. The crew of the Eternal Dominion began to respect him not because he served the Queen, but because he was genuinely good at what he did. One afternoon, Commander Rakon brought him a plasma rifle that had stopped working during training exercises. The weapon was a family heirloom, passed down through 3 generations. Every technician on the ship had tried to fix it and failed. Day One examined it carefully. The problem was not in the firing mechanism like everyone thought. It was in the power cell connection. A tiny crack had formed in the ceramic insulation, causing the energy to leak. He repaired it using a compound he mixed himself, and the rifle worked perfectly. Commander Rakon stared at the weapon in his hands, firing test shots at the range. Every shot was true. He turned to Day One with something like wonder in his eyes. "The human who touches the untouchable," he said quietly. It was becoming Day One's nickname among the crew, but not everyone was pleased. Advisor Thalen grew more bitter each day as his own importance decreased. Other technicians resented being shown up by a member of what they considered an inferior species. Tension simmered beneath the surface of daily life on the ship. Queen Valritha noticed all of this. She also noticed how Day One handled the pressure. He remained humble and focused on his work. He never bragged or sought attention. He simply did his job with quiet excellence. She began bringing him to strategy meetings. The first time, her military advisors were shocked into silence when the human walked into the war room. But Valritha insisted. She wanted his perspective on weapon systems and ship designs. "You see patterns that we miss?" she told him. "That is valuable." During one meeting about upgrading the ship's defensive systems, Day One offered a suggestion that changed everything. He proposed linking the shield generators in a rotating pattern instead of running them all at maximum constantly. This would give each generator time to cool while others handled the load, extending their lifespan significantly and actually improving overall protection. The chief engineer argued against it. "That is not how Kryvaxian ships work. We have always run shields at maximum." "I know," Day One replied carefully. "But has it always worked well?" There was an uncomfortable silence. Everyone in the room knew that shield generators failed regularly from overheating. It was accepted as normal. Queen Valritha decided to test Day One's idea on a small section of the ship. Within a week, those generators showed a 30% improvement in efficiency. She ordered the same modification throughout the entire vessel. The changes went deeper than just technical improvements. Valritha found herself talking to Day One about things that had nothing to do with machines. Late one night, while he worked on adjusting her armor's shoulder joints, she asked him something that had been on her mind. "Why did you fix my armor that first night? You knew the penalty was death. You could have stayed safe in the maintenance deck." Day One stopped working. He set down his tools and thought about his answer. "Because it was broken," he finally said. "And I know how to fix broken things. It felt wrong to let it stay broken when I could help." Valretha's compound eyes studied him. You risk your life for a feeling? Some things are more important than safety, Your Majesty. He picked up his tools again. Besides, broken things have value. They just need someone willing to see past the damage. She was quiet for a long time after that. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. You are not what I expected humans to be. Day One smiled slightly. You are not what I expected alien tyrants to be either, Your Majesty. For the first time since he had known her, Queen Valretha made a sound that might have been laughter. It was a strange clicking noise from deep in her chest. But there was genuine amusement in it. Their strange friendship might have continued to develop peacefully if the galaxy had allowed it. But peace was not to last. 3 months after Day One became the Royal Armorer, news reached the Eternal Dominion that sent shockwaves through the ship. The Vrex Collective had attacked a human colony world called New Jakarta. The assault was sudden and brutal. Thousands of civilians were killed in the first hour. When Day One heard the news, he went completely still. His hands stopped moving. His face became a mask. He did not know anyone on New Jakarta, but they were still his people. And the Vrex had slaughtered them as a demonstration of power. Queen Valretha found him sitting alone in the armory that evening, staring at nothing. I know about the attack, she said. They did it because of me, Day One replied, his voice empty. The Vrex want to show you that tolerating humans is weakness. So they killed thousands of my people to make their point. Valretha sat down beside him, a massive figure next to his small human form. They did it because they are fools who fear change. This is not your fault. Does that matter to the people who died? She had no answer for that. The next day, the Vrex Collective sent another message. It was no longer phrased diplomatically. Warlord Cross demanded that Queen Valretha execute her human armor and renew the harsh treatment of all conquered species. If she refused, the Vrex would consider it an act of betrayal against Kryvaxian values. They will attack regardless, he wrote. The only question is whether you stand with true Kryvaxians or with the lesser beings you seem to prefer. It was a declaration of war hidden in thin diplomatic language. Queen Valretha called a council meeting. Her advisors argued for hours about the best response. Some wanted to give in to Vrex demands to avoid civil war. Others wanted to attack first and crush the rebellion before it could grow, but Valretha had already made her decision. She stood before her council and spoke in a voice that filled the chamber. The Vrex Collective has murdered innocent civilians and threatened their queen. They will answer for both crimes. We depart for the front lines immediately. She turned to Day One, who stood quietly in the corner of the room. Prepare my armor for battle. And prepare yourself. If the Vrex have developed new weapons, I will need your mind as much as your hands. As the Eternal Dominion's massive engines powered up and the ship turned toward the war zone, everyone aboard knew that everything was about to change. The Vrex were not a small threat. They commanded hundreds of ships and thousands of soldiers. This would not be a simple battle. This would be a war that could tear the Empire apart, and somewhere in his armory, Day One worked through the night, checking every system in the Queen's armor. He knew what was coming. He knew that the Vrex would not fight fairly. They would bring weapons designed specifically to destroy Kryvaxian technology. He had to be ready. Because if the Queen's armor failed in the middle of battle, she would die. And if she died, there would be no one left to stand between humanity and complete destruction. The Eternal Dominion dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the contested system. Through the observation windows, the crew could see the Vrex fleet waiting for them. It was massive. Hundreds of warships arranged in perfect battle formation. Their weapons already charged and ready. They were expecting us, Commander Rukan said grimly. Queen Valretha stood on the bridge in her full armor, all 6 arms ready for combat. Of course they were. This is not about strategy. This is about making a statement. They want to destroy me publicly. Day One watched from a monitoring station near the back of the bridge. His hands moved across multiple screens, tracking the armor systems in real time. Everything showed green. The armor was working perfectly, but he felt uneasy. The Vrex had been planning this for a long time. They would not have started a war unless they believed they could win. The Vrex communication channel opened. Warlord Cross appeared on screen, his armor even more elaborate than the Queen's. His compound eyes blazed with fanatic intensity. Queen Velritha, you have betrayed everything the Kryvaxian Empire stands for. You elevate humans and treat conquered species as equals. You make us weak. Today, I will take your throne and restore proper order. Velritha did not flinch. You have murdered innocent civilians and committed treason. When I am done with you, there will not be enough left to bury. The communication cut off. Both fleets surged forward. The first exchange of fire was devastating. The Eternal Dominion's shields held, but barely. The Vrex had more ships and better positioning. Energy weapons lit up space like a deadly light show. Explosions bloomed across multiple vessels. Queen Velritha led a boarding party to take out the Vrex command ship. Her armor enhanced her already formidable strength. She and her elite warriors cut through the enemy vessel like a blade through flesh. Day One watched her vital signs and armor status from the bridge, his heart pounding as he saw damage accumulating. Then something changed. Velritha was fighting a group of Vrex soldiers when her armor suddenly glitched. The power output dropped by half. Her neural interface started sending error messages. Her weapon system went offline. Your Majesty, something is wrong with the armor. Day One shouted into the communication system. On the enemy ship, Velritha felt the systems failing. A Vrex war drone fired a special weapon directly at her. It made no sound, just a pulse of energy. Her armor screamed with alerts. Every system began shutting down. She barely dodged the next attack. Without her armor's full functionality, she was vulnerable. She grabbed one of her warriors and signaled retreat. They fought their way back to the shuttle as her armor continued failing. Back on the Eternal Dominion, Day One was already analyzing the data. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Vrex weapons were emitting a harmonic frequency specifically designed to disrupt Kryvaxian biomechanical systems. It was brilliant and terrible. They had created a weapon that turned the Queen's own armor against her. When Velritha returned to the ship, she was furious and wounded. The armor had protected her from fatal damage, but just barely. Blood leaked from cracks in her natural armor plating. They knew exactly how to attack me, she said, breathing heavily. Someone gave them detailed information about our technology. There was a traitor in the Empire, but that was a problem for later. Right now, the Vrex fleet was preparing for another assault. Day One ran to the armory where the Queen's damaged armor was being removed. He examined it quickly, confirming his fears. The harmonic weapon exploited vulnerabilities in Kryvaxian biomechanical interfaces. Every piece of technology that made the armor powerful also made it susceptible to this attack. Can you fix it? Velritha demanded. Day One looked up at her. Not the way it is now. The Vrex weapon will just disable it again. But I have an idea, he explained rapidly. Human technology used different principles than Kryvaxian biomechanics. Human systems relied on isolated circuits and redundant pathways. They were less efficient but much harder to disrupt with harmonic weapons. I can retrofit your armor with human-designed shielding and bypass systems, Day One said. The Vrex weapon will not work on hybrid technology. But it will take time? Hours? Maybe 6 or 7? Commander Raken shook his head. We do not have that long. The Vrex will attack again within 2 hours. Without the Queen in battle, we will lose. Velritha looked between her commander and her armorer. Every second counted. If she retreated from the battle now, her warriors would see it as cowardice. The Vrex would gain momentum. But if her armor failed again during the next fight, she would die. Do it, she ordered. We will hold them off as long as possible. You have 4 hours. Make them count. The Eternal Dominion pulled back from the front line, drawing criticism from some of the other Kryvaxian ships. The Vrex fleet advanced, sensing weakness. Ship-to-ship combat intensified as the Queen's forces tried to buy time without their leader. In the armory, Day One worked faster than he ever had before. He stripped out entire sections of the armor's biomechanical interface. He replaced them with human-designed circuit boards and power systems that he built on the spot using every resource available. He added layered shielding that would scatter harmonic frequencies instead of amplifying them. Explosions rocked the ship. The wrecks were breaking through the defensive line. Damage reports flooded in. 3 Allied ships had been destroyed. 2 more were crippled. Day One's hands were burned from working with overheated components. His tools were scattered everywhere. His eyes burned from exhaustion and sweat. But he could not stop. Lives depended on him finishing. Queen Velritha stood in the armory doorway, watching him work. She had never felt so helpless. She was a warrior, a queen, someone who controlled her own fate. But right now, her life depended entirely on a single human working desperately against time. 2 hours left, Commander Rakan reported over the communication system. Wrecks are breaching sectors 4 and 5. We cannot hold much longer. Day One connected the final power relay. His hands shook as he calibrated the new hybrid system. I need to test it, he said. If the integration is wrong, it could overload when you activate it. There is no time for testing, Velritha said. Another explosion shook the ship. This one close enough to knock tools off the workbench. Alarms blared. The wrecks had reached the outer hull. Day One looked at his work. It was rough, improvised, built from desperation and hope. Every engineer instinct in him screamed to test it properly. But there was no time. It is done, he said quietly. But I do not know if it will hold. Velritha approached the armor and began putting it on. The hybrid system activated with a sound different from before. Part organic hum, part mechanical whir. It felt strange, foreign, but powerful. She looked down at Day One, the small human who had risked everything to save her. She placed one of her 6 hands on his shoulder, a gesture of trust and gratitude that no Kryvaxian queen had ever given to a human before. Then we will find out together, she said. Queen Velritha strode toward the battle, her armor glowing with hybrid power. Behind her, Day One watched her go and whispered a prayer to gods he was not sure existed. The real fight was about to begin. Queen Velritha charged into battle with her hybrid armor blazing. The wrecked soldiers who had breached the ship turned to face her, their weapons already charging. They fired their harmonic disruptors, the same weapons that had crippled her before. The energy waves hit her armor and scattered harmlessly across the human-designed shielding. The hybrid system held. Velritha did not slow down. She crashed into the wrecks line like a storm. Her 6 arms moved with deadly precision. Enhanced by both Kryvaxian biomechanics and human engineering, she was faster and stronger than ever before. The wrecked soldiers who had felt so confident moments ago now fell back in shock on the bridge. Commander Rakan watched the battle data with growing amazement. The armor is working. Better than before. Her power output is 120% of normal capacity. Day One collapsed into a chair, his hands still shaking from the hours of intense work. He had done it? The hybrid system was stable. Throughout the Eternal Dominion, the Queen's warriors rallied. Seeing their leader fighting at full power again gave them new strength. They pushed back against the Vrex invaders deck by deck, but the real battle was in space. Warlord Cross commanded his fleet to focus all fire on the Eternal Dominion. He knew that if Velritha died, the war was won. His ships unleashed everything they had. Velritha returned to the bridge, her armor smoking but intact. Take us directly toward their command ship, she ordered. Your Majesty, that is suicide, Advisor Thalen protested. They have us surrounded? They have us surrounded with technology designed to counter our systems, Velritha replied. But they do not know about the changes we made. Take us in close. I want to board Cross's ship personally. The Eternal Dominion accelerated toward the enemy fleet. Vrex ships fired their harmonic disruptors at full power, expecting to disable the Queen's vessel. But Day One had not just modified the armor. During those desperate hours, he had also sent modifications. To the engineering team to shield critical ship, systems using the same hybrid. Principles. The harmonic weapons that should have crippled. The Eternal Dominion barely scratched it. The Vrex fleet commanders panicked. Their ultimate weapon was useless. Queen Velretha's ship punched through their formation and latched onto Warlord Cross's command vessel. Velretha led the boarding party herself. They cut through the hull and poured into the enemy ship. This time, when Vrex soldiers fired harmonic disruptors at her, she did not even flinch. The hybrid armor held perfectly. She fought her way to the command deck with unstoppable force. Warlord Cross faced her in full battle armor. He was a massive warrior, even by Kryvaxian standards. He had won 100 battles and expected to win this one too. "Your human tricks will not save you," he roared, charging at her. They clashed in the center of the command deck. 6 arms against 6 arms. Armor against armor. But Cross quickly realized something was wrong. Velretha was faster than she should be, stronger. Her armor responded to her movements with impossible precision. "This is what happens when you underestimate other species," Velretha said, driving him back. "You become rigid, predictable, weak." She defeated him in single combat, her hybrid armor giving her the edge she needed. When Cross fell, his remaining forces surrendered immediately. Without their leader, the rebellion collapsed. The battle was won, but at terrible cost. 7 ships destroyed. Thousands of warriors dead on both sides. The colony world of New Jakarta still lay in ruins. Victory felt hollow. In the days after the battle, Queen Velretha stood before the assembled council of the Kryvaxian Empire. Representatives from dozens of systems had gathered to witness the aftermath. Many expected her to execute day one now that the crisis was over. The human had served his purpose. Tradition demanded he be put back in his place, but Velretha had other plans. She stood in her hybrid armor before the entire council. She removed her helmet so they could see her face clearly. "You ask why I allowed a human to touch my armor," she began. "You question my judgment in elevating him. You see it as weakness. I will tell you what I see." She gestured toward Day One, who stood small and uncomfortable among the towering alien dignitaries. "This human saved my life. He saved this ship. He did what none of you could do. Not because he was lucky or desperate, but because he approached problems differently. While you clung to tradition and what we have always done, he found new solutions." The council chamber filled with murmurs. Some angry, some thoughtful, Velretha continued. "The Vrex nearly destroyed us with a weapon that exploited our own technology. They would have won if we had not adapted. If we had not been willing to learn from others. That is the truth you must face." She turned to address the entire assembly, her voice carrying the weight of command. "Humanity is not our enemy anymore. They are our greatest resource. They see things we cannot see. They create solutions we would never imagine. If we are to survive what is coming, if we are to face threats from outside our empire and challenges we cannot predict, we need that perspective." Admiral Thalen stood up, his voice bitter. "You would make us equal to conquered species? You would destroy everything that makes us Kryvaxian?" "I would make us stronger," Velretha shot back. "Strength is not about staying the same. It is about adapting, growing, learning." She issued a historic decree. Humans would no longer be treated as a conquered species. They would be granted probationary citizenship in the Empire. They would have limited representation in councils. They would have rights and opportunities to prove themselves. It was not freedom. It was not equality. But it was a beginning. The council debated for hours. Some representatives threatened to break away and join the remaining Vrex forces. Others, especially those who had seen the battle firsthand, supported the queen. In the end, her will prevailed. She was still queen and she had just won a war. The changes began slowly. Day One was granted the official title of Master Armorer, a position that had never been held by a non-Kryvaxian. He was given a large workshop and permission to recruit other humans to work with him. One of his first recruits was a young woman named Jiwoo who had been working in ship maintenance. She was brilliant with power systems and eager to learn. Together, they began training other humans in advanced engineering. Weeks passed. The Empire slowly adjusted to its new reality. There was resistance, of course. Centuries of prejudice did not disappear overnight, but gradually, humans began appearing in positions beyond basic labor. Some became technicians. Others became advisors. A few even joined military units. One afternoon, Queen Velretha visited Day One's workshop. He was teaching Jiwoo how to recalibrate a neural interface while maintaining respect for the biomechanical components. They both bowed when the Queen entered. "Your Majesty," Day One greeted her. "I need your assessment on something," Velretha said. She paused, then added, "Not as my armorer, as my advisor?" Day One looked up, surprised by the distinction. "The Vrex will return eventually," she continued. "What remains of their forces has retreated, but they will regroup. And when they come back, they will have adapted to counter our hybrid technology. We must be ready." She looked around the workshop, at the human and Krivaxian tools side by side, at the mixture of technologies being developed. "I want you to design something new. A completely integrated hybrid system. Not just Krivaxian armor with human modifications, but something built from the ground up using both our knowledge, armor, weapons, ships, everything." Day One considered the scope of what she was asking. "That would take years, Your Majesty, and it would require real cooperation between our species. Not just humans working for Krivaxians, but working together as equals." "I know," Velretha said. "That is exactly what I want." Jiwoo spoke up hesitantly. "If we are designing new systems, we should include other species too. The Tarvan are excellent with energy systems. The Quilax understand shield harmonics better than anyone." Velretha's compound eyes turned to the young human. A few months ago, she would have been executed for speaking without permission. Now Velretha simply nodded. "A good suggestion. Begin reaching out to engineers from other species. If they are willing to work with humans and Krivaxians together, they have a place here." As the Queen turned to leave, Day One called out, "Your Majesty, why are you really doing this? You have won the war. You could go back to the old ways and no one could stop you." Velretha paused at the doorway. She looked back at the small human who had changed everything by fixing her armor one night. "Because you were right," she said quietly. "Broken things have value. They just need someone willing to see past the damage. The Empire was broken, rigid, unable to change. You helped me see that. Now we must fix it together." She left, her hybrid armor humming softly with combined technologies. Day One returned to his work, Jiwoo beside him. Outside the workshop, the massive ship flew through space, carrying both Krivaxian and human crew members. The future was uncertain. There would be more battles, more resistance, more challenges, but for the first time since the war began, Day One felt something he had not felt in years. He felt hope. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. And somewhere in a workshop on the Eternal Dominion, a human and his students were building the tools that would help them face whatever came next, together.